Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But today is Monday, the 19th of February 2024, and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the Doha moot that happened, this two-day moot that happened on Afghanistan. Special envoys on Afghanistan attended this moot, but of course there were different representatives of the civil society in Afghanistan that were there, but the Afghan Taliban representation was not there because they had put certain preconditions, and those preconditions as per their stance were not met with. This said, what are the implications of this Doha moot? What is the importance of this meeting of important countries that were there, the envoys of these important countries that were there, as far as the future of Afghanistan, the relationship of Afghanistan with the regional countries, with the global countries, its placement amongst the Committee of Nations, and whether the countries in the near future or at any time in the future will be accepting Afghanistan as a state democratically is a huge question mark. Also, there are a lot of question marks that have been raised by the West as far as Afghanistan's plight is concerned, whether it be on the human rights, whether it be on the women, whether it be on the education, and more. This and more will be discussed during our first story. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the day 136 of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Now, what is very important today is a ruling of the ICJ that will be given in the coming days. This is a 5-day judicial happening that is taking place in The Hague at the ICJ, where different countries are going to present their case. Today was the day Palestine presented its case in detail, whether it be through Nader Al-Maliki, Riyad Al-Maliki, who is the foreign minister of the state of Palestine, or other important representatives from Palestine. They presented Palestine's case, and of course they highlighted what needed to be done as far as Palestine is concerned, and the responsibility on the Committee of Nations and Israel as well. At the same time, Gaza's Ministry of Health has said another patient has died at the Nasser hospital. We also talked about this on Friday, how the Israelis had entered into the Nasser hospital, not the first hospital that they had bombarded or entered into, and the whole plight of the people, whether it be the patients or the non-patients or the women who are pregnant or the children who have been struck by the bullets from the Israeli side, are at stake. At stake is also the situation, human rights situation in Palestine, whether it be the lack of food, the lack of water, the lack of basic health supplies, the lack of medicine, and the lack of proper facilities or the dignity therein. There is a huge lack of that since the last 136 days, and it is only getting worse. With that, the latest is that Israel says that it is going to do this ground offensive in Rafah. That is the only safe place that is left in Palestine next month if the hostages that Palestine has with it are not released by Ramadan. What kind of plight will it further aggravate as far as the situation in Palestine is concerned, and the whole imbroglio that this nation, this state that has been reduced to a very small number and a very small place at this moment as we speak, that is Rafah, is considered. Also, the role of the important world countries becomes very paramount. There have been a lot of condemnations from the world over as far as Palestine's situation is concerned. We will only see how all of that will board out. We also know that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has brushed off growing calls to halt the military offensive in Gaza, promising to finish the job. Let's begin with our first story, and that concerns the two-day moot that happened in Doha, with the special envoys on Afghanistan taking part. But of course, there was no participation from the Afghan interim government side. To talk more about that, we've been joined by Dr. Salma Malik. She's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Salma, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Salma, this whole moot was about Afghanistan, about how to move forward as far as the situation in Afghanistan is concerned. But the Afghan Foreign Ministry has not responded to requests for comments on its plans to attend. And of course, there was a quote by the Norwegian Refugee Council that said, "We urge all sides to do more to hammer out details that can benefit the long-suffering Afghan people." But of course, there was an absence from the Afghan government side, though there were representatives from the Afghan public or the Afghan civil side as well. Why, in your point of view, is the Afghan side not presenting its case, and why is there a certain uncertainty as to the future of this moot is concerned?
Thank you so much, Omar, for having me speak on this important topic. This was unfortunately the second moot on Afghanistan by the special UN envoys, and on both these moots, the earlier one in May 23, this one that you're talking about, where despite the discussion being on Afghanistan, there has been no formal representation of Afghanistan. And when we say formal, obviously at the moment we are talking about the regime which is controlling Kabul and the regime which the Americans handed over the baton to before they left Kabul. And in the previous one, they were not asked to join, and in this one, they decided not to be there. And in the previous one, they were not asked to be there, and this one, they decided not to join. Vice versa. And that makes the situation unfortunate because when it comes to commitment and when it comes to being part of the process, unless and until the Afghan representatives, the formal official representatives are there on board, things will not work. Previously, it was the pressure that they decided to exert on them so that they can show better record when it comes to women participation and women role in Afghanistan and the women rights issue. This time, the Afghan representation is actually using the same excuse against the UN people and the special envoys for this mood by saying that we will think it out, and in case you ask any other civil society, Afghan civil society member, then we are out of it. So they're just trying to play with the situation and skirt around the main issue and not really reach there.
All right, Dr. Salma, we all know that countries, the Afghan envoys in different countries were there at the mood, including from the Pakistani side as well. And it was a two-day meeting hosted by Antonio Guterres, who is the United Nations Secretary General. And they discussed two important points: the increasing engagement with Afghanistan and a more coordinated response to the country. Now, my question is twofold. The first part is, how can we increase engagement with Afghanistan under the current situation, and at the same time also have a more coordinated response by the country?
What is interesting to see here, Omar, is the fact that despite all the hue and cry that the Afghan Taliban are not legitimate people, they have been thrusted upon by people. One thing we all need to and I guess the Western powers are very cognizant of it, very silently accept is that the Americans, when they left this place, and these things are coming out now more openly, they actually invited the Taliban to come and take over. Plus, the Doha process entirely was to see who can legitimately then run Afghanistan once the Americans are out and there is not a breakdown of civil order, which the Taliban have maintained so far. Yet, what they have done is how they are supposed to rule, and no one had two ideas about it. Our discussions with the U.S. envoys who were heading to Doha during those years when they were negotiating the Doha process, time and again we would talk about what would happen to the women, and they would just skim that issue. They would say we have larger problems, we are going to look at it, and the recent conversation coming from the Taliban also mentions that we need to take a softer position when it comes to the women issue. So perhaps there might be some kind of an agreement on that point. Then the second development that has taken place around this particular meeting, the Doha meeting we are talking about, is the recognition by China and acceptance of the Afghan envoy, and the way these conversations formally and informally are happening. And now that they are happening, that also means that the world is trying to figure out how to normalize slowly and gradually the Afghan situation when Afghanistan is not really creating a lot of headlines. The headlines which are usually taking people's concentration and making people more attentive is unfortunately the Palestinian situation. It is Ukraine to an extent. Afghanistan is no longer fashionable, and this is actually a good time when you slowly and gradually re-establish the norms and quietly make that move which doesn't create big tremors, and then you realize that, things have become normalized. So I think this is also one way of the international community, especially the Western community, to have one less trouble in its cache of troubles and have an Afghanistan on which they can somewhat rely and have some support, so that in the larger geopolitical order, the Americans have lesser to worry about, and also to have some allies in case it requires in the future order, the way the situation is escalating and growing up. Plus, we cannot ignore Iran right next door. So I think again it's the US who's trying to get into that containment, soft containment approach, having allies, having cushions around its areas of strategic importance so that it doesn't have too much to look into.
That is true. Dr. Salma, in all of this case, I understand the role of Iran and the whole geopolitical or geostrategic environment that is changing in the region as well. But at the same time, let's go back to Afghanistan and the main, cases of contention, the main issues of contention between the West or between the global North and Afghanistan. And that is A, women, B, rights of women, and B, a right to education for the women as well. Do you feel that these are something, these are two issues where an arrangement could be brought about between Afghanistan and the rest of the world so that it could be finally recognized? And B, in your point of view, what are the other factors that could impede broader international cooperation with Afghanistan after this move? What are the basic impediments?
You see, Afghan women rights and women education is no rocket science, that the entire country needs to gear up and do a jihad against women education. I think the Taliban, or at least some segments within the Taliban is not a uniform body. They have different shades, yet they go by a uniform decision-making policy. So that makes them look very conformist, and that makes them look like a united front. But the very fact is that the Afghans are also, there's a divided house when it comes to women education and women rights. There is one segment that talks about giving them rights, opening schools. If you're giving the boys the same type of education that girls were getting, so why can't the boys get more corrupt, and why do the women become more corrupt by the Western style of education, quote unquote? But the fact is that this is one aspect. So this has landed the Taliban into a lot of trouble, but there is now loud thinking coming from Afghanistan that this issue should be looked into, and there should be a softer approach handling this problem. So this might actually also be linked with the fact that there are two aspects. One, of course, the formal recognition. The second aspect is economic aid and economic recovery. And Afghanistan is now slipping into a situation where it requires the type of money that eludes it. But at the same time, the fact that when the Taliban took over and Pakistan made these ardent appeals that one must help Taliban and not sanction them and give them their due right, that was Afghanistan's money. Otherwise, it would be a very cold winter, people would starve to death. This all did not happen primarily for one factor, that somehow or the other, the international community kept on giving the type of aid money to the Taliban and to the Afghanistan through indirect channels that has allowed the things to continue so far. But it cannot happen endlessly. So there has to be a systematic progression. There has to be trade and commerce and several other things.
Dr. Salma, we talk of systematic progression. I'd like to also understand a little point of disagreement between the parties and Afghanistan, and that is the creation of a special UN envoy on Afghanistan. Why is Afghanistan or the current government in Afghanistan not ready to have a special envoy from the United Nations side on Afghanistan? This was also one of the preconditions why their committee did not come in this two-day mood.
I guess there's also this lack of trust. There's also this double talk that goes, and the Afghan Taliban feel that the person, they themselves are strong enough to represent themselves or to talk directly to the people concerned. One of the last envoys, Khalid, did not really enjoy the type of mandate that he was supposed to, and things really became messy as a result of that. So it's also that lack of trust, also the fact that the Taliban feel that anything that has to happen in a very direct one-to-one basis. And they consider a special envoy as a spoiler in the game, so they don't want to go in that direction.
Now, Dr. Salma, what kind of output do you see as a result of this two-day mood? Do you feel there will be some positive consequences or some kind of resolution between all these envoys that are coming that also would be acceptable to the Afghan side?
One thing that appears to be a little obvious with time is that there is this international consensus that we should recognize the Taliban as the legitimate administrators of Afghanistan, and there is for the moment no other authority that can handle this effective conflict within society. And having said that, if it is working this way, let's continue with how the state of affairs works till such time that there is a better arrangement, and there is no better arrangement that one can see at the moment. The two American-backed governments that we know that happened during these last 20 plus years could not also unfortunately hold ground. They were not micro-connected with the people. With the Taliban, whether it's the fear factor, whatever it is, we do know how the Doha process has legitimized them. The Americans can blame it on Pakistan as much as they want, but everyone knows that at the end of the day, who fled and who remained or who prevailed. So having these things in mind, I think for the Americans having one more, or the Western world having one more frontier to monitor or to have one more troublesome frontier is not exactly what they are thinking of. So if they have a friendly government, a government that at least can talk to them, they would go for that. And they are indulging the Taliban into such type of conversation.
Well, I hope such conversations bring some kind of fruit as far as, the Afghan Taliban is concerned. But there are huge concerns on education, on women's rights, and on security. That is also, Dr. Salma, that is also one of the huge concerns.
Yes, I totally agree with you. But you see, again, I go back to the point that when the Doha process was being negotiated, these points were hammered in, were discussed ardently with the American and the Western team. And they knew that the Taliban at the end of the day may not honor much of what is being said. But even then, they were not taken as very serious priority. There is a lot of lip syncing when it comes to women's rights in Afghanistan. But is the world really, the Western world, really doing a lot in that regard? No. When we come to Pakistan, we have suggested several options to the Afghan Taliban. To the people who have visited Pakistan, we can do remote teaching, we can do, we can get into syllabi making with them, make it more friendly for what they require, and there are several options that have been placed on the table. There are Afghan students who have come into the Islamic University being taught here, many Afghan nationals who are returning home literate from this system, which is very Sharia compliant as much as it could be. And those things could very well be incorporated in the Afghan system. But the reluctance from the Afghan Taliban is really fascinating to see, because one does not understand as to why have they just decided that this is a red line that cannot be crossed, which is not the case. It can be crossed, it can be negotiated and talked about, but the fact is that they are not doing what they are doing. But it is not something that cannot really be worked upon. It can be, it needs to be, and it has to be.
All right, if a negotiation has to be, my final question to you, Dr. Salma, if a negotiation has to happen, why should we not take into concern the security aspect of it all? All the terror outfits that are being harbored by the Afghan interim government within Afghanistan, which are, trying to integrate across the borders into neighboring countries, especially Pakistan, the havoc that they have created since the last few months or even more, which Afghanistan understands, which Pakistan has time and again, as you also pointed out, highlighted its perspective and how Afghanistan should move forward. But they are not, they don't even properly recognize the Durand line, to be very frank. I'd like to also add to that our Foreign Office that has said that Pakistan's participation in the conference would show its commitment to actively engaging with the international community, including the UN, to support efforts towards achieving lasting peace and prosperity in Afghanistan. How important is Pakistan's role in all of this, in its relationship with Afghanistan, in curtailing terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, and in trying to have a stable and prosperous Afghanistan?
I think Afghan security is Pakistan security. Insecurity in Afghanistan is insecurity for Pakistan. The points which you have just mentioned here, Omar, about the cross-border infiltration, troubles at the border area, non-recognition of Durand line, all of these aspects, they have a very strong resonance within Afghanistan because they feel that they're doing a great job to the Afghan cause by not recognizing, despite knowing that what they're saying is not possible. There is no Durand line, there is a Pak-Afghan border, and that's about it. When they say Durand line, they're actually getting into conflict lexicon because the Durand line gives a very strong sense of non-permanence to a Pak-Afghan border, which is very much consolidated and internationally recognized. But they do it for political consumption, they do it for internal consumption, and there is nothing beyond that. It has always been respected by both sides, yet when we say that it has been respected and it's yet violated, it shows that they want to create trouble. And for them, supporting elements within Pakistan who are creating trouble for Pakistan also speaks for that false bravado that has become a hallmark of such regimes. And unless and until there is a serious talk about it, it will not curb. But you see, Pakistan does not want to take a confrontational path with Afghanistan. Pakistan wants things to happen on a happy note, on a conciliatory note, on a brotherly note. Otherwise, this recent episode that Pakistan had with its other Western neighbor, Pakistan responded very well, very strategically, very well calculated, and gave the message loud and clear that if there is any violation of its space, physical or ideological, this is going to be Pakistan's response. And if Pakistan is made to respond this way, the Taliban would really then face a lot of difficulty. And this is not something that you are saying because you want to create some political statement, but this is something which a country needs to do if it wants its neighbors to respect its political and ideological boundary. And
I totally agree with you on that, Dr. Salma, but the fact is the whole, question mark is how willing is Afghanistan? How willing is Afghanistan to make those changes within its government, within its whole apparatus? That change needs to come from within Afghanistan, and then everything can go for the better or for the worse. It all depends. The whole onus of responsibility, I feel.
If anyone of us thinks that Afghan Taliban are not a rational actor, we have to think twice. They're a very, very rational, they're very in the world type of people who understand the nuances of the world. If they did not, the Doha process, this orientation and training that they received while they were waiting out in Doha, has equipped them with all these contemporary nuances, and they very well understand what is happening. The use of Sharia is also part of this larger setup which provides the type of legitimacy no one else is doing. But the fact is that creating a confrontational path being pushed by countries like India silently, using Afghan space and Afghan vulnerability of getting recognized, getting political as well as trading partners without short of recognition. The Indians are doing a lot in Afghanistan, and that has also created problems for Pakistan. Pakistan needs to remain very active on that, as well as keep a chronicle of what is happening and how these things are happening.
I agree with you. I
And
agree
there
with you
has
on
to
that.
be a befitting response.
I agree with you on that, Dr. Salma. And you know, it's very important. The next few months are going to be very important for Afghanistan and for the whole geostrategic positioning of different countries, including Afghanistan, in this region and its relationship with the West. Thank you very much, Dr. Salma Malik, to have joined us, to have talked to us about this two-day moot on Afghanistan by the special envoys of different countries that were there in Doha to discuss how to move forward as far as their relationship with Afghanistan is concerned. Let's move to our second topic, and that concerns the humanitarian crisis, all the other kinds of crises, the whole situation that is coming to a boiling point, or if it hasn't already come to a boiling point in Palestine. A lot is happening, and before I even go towards that, I'd like to discuss all of the different aspects of it, starting with the International Court of Justice, with my guest who is here with me in the studios, Nader Alturk, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of the State of Palestine to Pakistan. Thank you very much, Brother Nader, to have joined us. I'd like to begin with the ICJ. It is hearing a very historic hearing into Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories since 1967. In your point of view, what could be the possible outcome? Because Palestine, of course, presented its case today.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to be your guest tonight. Actually, the important of that is we going to reactivate the international resolution created by General Assembly of United Nations in 2012, number 6719, which accept Palestine as a membership of as a state in General Assembly of United Nations. It is observer membership, but later on we are optimistic it's going to become a full membership. So the importance of this, that if they recognize and accept that Israel's occupation and activate that according to international law it is not legal and it needs to be end according to 242 resolution in 1967, which speak that the Israelis need to withdraw their army out of the occupied territories occupied in 1967, which is West Bank, Gaza Strip, include Jerusalem. So if we are succeeding that, that's going to lead us to recognizing a state of Palestine as independent, free state with Jerusalem at its capital. This is what we are willing from ICJ in the future and from the international society to be indeed a bear on the ground as soon as possible. To end our misery life as a Palestinians, we are the only people on the world still under occupation since more than 75 years until now.
Mr. Riyad al-Maliki today, when he was presenting Palestine's case in the International Court of Justice, presented 5 different maps of the state of Palestine, beginning with the very first to the second of 1947 and the last one that Netanyahu presented of Middle East, in which there is no state of Palestine. We see the dastardly evolution of these maps as per the Israeli concept. How important was it for Palestine to present its case as well, as far as the maps are concerned?
You know, before a few years I was your guest. The problem which you are facing with the Israelis, that they are ignore the Palestinians people as a people. Golda Meir started that before. She said there is no people of Palestine, okay, but she was recognized herself, okay, that introduced herself that I am Palestinian, because she was immigrated to Palestine before 1948 during the British occupation to Palestine. But on the other hand, she was not recognizing there is Palestinian people. Later on, after that, they start speaking there is Palestinian people, but there is no Palestinian state. Later on, when we go to Oslo agreements, they start speak about getting two-state solution, and there is people of Palestine, there is PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, as a leader and representative of Palestinians, and on the other hand, it's going to be a state of Palestine. So we are succeed to take by step to make them. But Netanyahu actually, he is using old tools for the modern history. This is the problem of Mr. Netanyahu. And actually, this has reminded me of something very important. George Bush Jr., he was warning Palestinian leadership that no one has the right to question the legality of the state of Israel. Actually, right now, Mr. Netanyahu is questioning the legality of Israel by himself when he speaks about he is not accepting the process which right now the international society starts to speak about two-state solution on the historical land of Palestine, and he said he will not accept and literal legalization of the state of Palestine without getting negotiation with Israel as well, except that things. The question was this need us for what the discuss and question the Israeli side according to that. Balfour Declaration, it was taken from one side, not from two sides. This was taken by the British side, where they promised the Jew to have a state or have a state on the land of Palestinian territories. In that time, even that time, Palestine was still part of Ottoman's empire, Ottoman's Khilafah. Second, 181 resolution which divided Palestine for two states without asking the opinion of the Palestinians, who are actually the original people of the land of Palestine since 12,000 years until now. No one asked our opinion about that. They take the decision by international society without asking our opinion, and they establishing the state of Israel and give them 56% of the land, but Israel is occupied in that was in 1947, and the Israelis occupied in 1948 78% of the land. So Mr. Netanyahu, before he asked and ignoring the international society willing to have a state of Palestine, he need to ask him how his state was establishing on the land of Palestine. If he discussed the state of Palestine, we need to discuss the legality of the establishing of the state of Israel of Palestinian territories. So this is the case right now. If we start discussing that, we're going to discuss that.
Where lies the importance of the United Nations? We have all seen how the Israeli side has tried to undermine the importance of even the United Nations Secretary General by asking him to step down. This happened a couple of weeks back, and we discussed that in a previous show as well. Which organization's role becomes more important as far as giving the right to the people of Palestine, their due right to rid its land of colonialism and apartheid, of genocide that is happening? Is it the United Nations? Is it some other organization? Is it a particular country? Is it a group of countries? Who should you look towards?
First of all, we are looking for United Nations, because who's creating the problem of Palestine is United Nations. When they are taking the resolution 181 and decide to divide Palestinians' territories, Palestinian homeland for two states, 56% for the Israelis, 44% for the Palestinians, they create the problem by creating the state of Israel. So according to that, they need to take their responsibilities and their duties to make the Palestinian state appear on the ground according to all the international laws, according to all international resolutions. This is first. Second, international society need to have the power, need to have the courage to question the Israeli occupation, which is illegal, and decide to end this occupation once forever by establishing a state of Palestine with Jerusalem at its capital, and facilitate the right of return of Palestinian refugees according to international resolution, United Nations Resolution 194. This is what is needed. First of all, we need to insist the Americans to stop use the veto illegally to support blindly the Israelis in their crimes against humanity, in their genocide, in their apartheid system, and all their crimes against the Palestinians. They run away with it according to American blindly support and Americans' veto. This is need to be done by international society, by make the Americans follow the international law and to understand, as a superpower country, your duty not to ignore the international law, not to support genocide, not support the criminal action by Israelis, but your duty is to keep the international security, to keep the justice for all humanity, and make all human beings believe in the just and justice of the international law, of international organization, or we're going to go for more and more circle of violence, more and more circle of blood, not only in Palestine but in all the world.
You know, you talk of circle of violence, a circle of blood. Let's also talk about the circle of genocide that is happening in Palestine as we speak. Amnesty International issues a statement very recently saying that Israel must end its brutal occupation of Palestine to stop fueling apartheid and systemic human rights violation. So many statements have come, have been made by different organizations, sometimes by different countries, such as Brazil. But are such statements enough? What should be the next step as far as human rights violations, apartheid and genocide is concerned?
Next step, we need all the human beings, all our brothers and sisters in humanity, to be united against two: Israel's occupation and Americans' support for the Israelis. You see, Americans right now speak about two-state solution. On the other hand, they are not explain, they make it mysterious solution. They don't explain what kind of border of the two-state solution. They accept Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Palestine according to international resolutions or not. They don't speak about the right of return of the Palestinian refugees. So, if they are going to be the borders according to borders of before 1967, according to 242 resolution, or according to 181 resolution in 1947, which that one, the first one, 242, speak about 22% of the historical land of Palestine. 181 resolution speak about 44% of the land of Palestine for the Palestinians, or who going to giving giving rebirth for the deal of the Senate would give the Palestinians only 12% of the land of Palestine and recognizing Jerusalem as a capital of the Israelis. This is the question for the Americans. This needs to be cleared. They are going to follow the international law, or they're going to follow their own opinion by supporting apartheid system by Israelis.
All right, let's also talk about famine. You know, we are seeing the different sit-ins that are happening by Israelis in front of the different border crossings, for example, with Egypt at the Zana border crossing, to prevent aid entering the Gaza Strip. UNRWA says Israel has blocked half of its aid missions to northern Gaza since the beginning of the year. The United Nations also warns that hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza are on the brink of starvation. Is famine being used as a weapon of war here in Palestine?
For sure, indeed. Actually, because the Israeli plan is, their plan is transfer Palestinians, people who are living in Gaza, outside of Gaza. We discussed that before in your honorable show. The Israeli plan is to transfer 2.3 million Palestinians outside of Gaza to reoccupy the Gaza Strip and become part of the Israeli territories, part of the Israeli state. This is the plan. If they succeed in that, the next step, according to that, they damage 80% of the buildings in Gaza, destroy all the infrastructure in Gaza, destroy most of the schools, most of the universities, and destroy many of hospitals and clinics in Gaza, which means in the end of the war, people will not have the ability to come back to their normal life because there is nowhere to live, no resources to support their living in Gaza. There's no schools, no universities, no hospitals, and no way to have any income because they destroy all the banks, institute, all the shops, all the commercial areas, which means they give you, later on the people have two options: live for long years without home, without work, without job, without food, or going to transfer themselves outside of Gaza, looking for better life outside of Gaza. This is the Israelis' plan. And if they succeed in that, they're going to transfer the Palestinians who are living in the West Bank. We speak about 3 million Palestinians live in the West Bank. And going to transfer people who are living include, of course, Jerusalem. Later on, if they succeed, that they're going to even transfer the Palestinians who are holding Israeli citizen, because Israel was establishing with a huge lie that Palestine land, it is a land without people, for people without a land, which is it is for become only for the Jew. This is what the Israelis plan, and if they are succeed of that, this is going to be the future of our territory.
Okay.
Greater Israel. This is what the Israelis plan, to occupy 100% of Palestine, 100% of Lebanon, 100% of Jordan, 100% of Kuwait, 75% of Syria, 45% of Saudi Arabia, 45% of Iraq, 35% of Egypt, and going to occupy part of Turkey, okay, and as I mentioned, whole of Kuwait and whole of Lebanon, which means we have a greater Israel, which means if we are key, and to end and damage all this devil plans, start from damage their plans in Gaza by supporting end of genocide in Gaza, by supporting the establishing of the independent state of Palestine with Jerusalem at its capital, by supporting the right of return of Palestinian refugees to their own home according to 194 resolution, or this is going to be the future, and then everyone in the world who going to make his own greater state and ignoring the international law, ignoring the historical rights of the other nations, and this is going to be more and more cycle of blood and cycle of violence, not only in our region, it's going to be in all the world.
Let's hope, Nader Alturk, that this does not happen and we don't go to this stage. Before that, let's come also to Rafah, because this is a very huge issue as far as the Palestinians, the 1.5 million Palestinians that are crammed. Is a small area that used to be an area of peace for the refugees, but now it is with all the Palestinians that have come from different parts of Gaza and are crammed in this small area. Different countries, Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Turkey, Egypt, have called on Israel to stop the offensive in Rafah. The Belgian foreign minister has very recently taken out a statement and said that the city of Rafah must be spared and any large-scale Israeli military operation. Israel says that if the hostages, the quote-unquote hostages, are not returned to it by Ramadan next month, it's going to start its ground offensive in Rafah during the holy month of Ramadan. What are you foreseeing? What do you think is going to happen in the next couple of days? Do you feel that Israel can be stopped from this ground offensive in Rafah one way or the other?
First of all, we need to ask ourselves what's the difference of genocide today and genocide in Ramadan? Genocide, it is genocide. Killing other people, civilian people, children, women, old people, they are do nothing only because they are Palestinian. This is, what is the difference? If is that happening today, yesterday, or happening during Ramadan? It is the same.
Of course.
Still, criminal, it is a criminal. What is the timing? So, we have a lot of nice speech from many Western countries, from the Americans, but actually, the Americans just a few days before, they decide to support Israelis and supply for them weapons, bombs, Jadam bombs, more about 1,000 Jadam bombs. It's going to be used against Rafah, going to be used. Okay, which means they are giving to, in the one hand, they give you a nice speech, but their action and their practice on the ground, they blindly support the Israelis and supply more and more weapons for them to kill more and more Palestinians, which means they are not doing any action on the ground to end this genocide, to end this ethnic cleansing for the Palestinians, to end this crimes against humanity. So we need more active, better than have more good words.
All right. Also, I'd like to understand at least 107 Palestinians have been killed. This is something that happens every day. Per day, at least 100 plus people are killed in Palestine, across Gaza, everywhere. The current death toll is more than 29,000. The current toll of people who've been injured has exceeded 69,000. What happens to the rest of the Palestinians? What is going to be their fate in the next couple of weeks? Secondly, I'd also like to add to that there has been a report by the Washington Post that talks about Joe Biden's administration along with a certain group of Arab nations, without naming those nations, working on a comprehensive peace plan which includes a timeline for the establishment of a Palestinian state. But of course, it has been negated by Netanyahu. What's very interesting is that in all of these meetings, there is the like, for example, the meeting that is currently happening as we speak, the Israeli president is there, but the prime minister is not there. Is there also going to be a change in Israeli politics? A. B. Is that going to affect the current genocide in Palestine? Could we see a ray of light at the end of the tunnel due to these peace talks or due to these negotiations that are happening between important countries across the world? What is the future of the Middle East? What is the future of Palestine?
First, I need to explain one thing. The president of Israel, actually, he is like the king of Britain. He don't have any authorities.
Okay.
The real authority between the hands of the prime minister. Second, what is happening in the future, this is going to be one of the solutions, this map, or we have other two options. We need to have the power to insist the Israelis to follow the international law, follow the international resolutions, respect their neighbors, respect the life of other human beings, looking for others as a human beings and are not the elite and the only human beings in the world and others only animals, according to what they are mentioned before, the Israelis leadership. This is second. Third, we have other two options. We have state of Palestine, two ways to state of Palestine. One solution is two-state according to borders before 1967 or following the 181 resolution as a borders. Second, we have the scenario or the model of South of Africa. We are speaking about Israelis are having apartheid system similar to what happened in South Africa before.
Okay.
And actually we have the same things. There are settlers came from Europe, occupied our homeland and become leading our homeland. That happened before in the model of South Africa. South Africa leader on the white settlers, the European settlers, start to understand that the colored people have equal rights and establish, and Nelson Mandela become a president of the state and lead the state for stability and cooperate between the two parties, the white people and the colored people, and become equal parties as equally human beings. So we have two scenarios, two-state solution or one-state solution by ending the apartheid system, by Israel's apartheid system. And this is right now the ball in the Israelis' side to decide what kind of things they want. They want this or want two-state solution or want one-state solution.
All right. Well, let's see what happens. If I was to just ask you just one small, 3 words, would you be wanting a two-state or a one-state solution?
Actually, Israel is working hard to destroy the two-state solution. Since Netanyahu, not only Netanyahu, when we go to Madrid conference, and Ishaq Shamir was the Prime Minister of Israel, he said, I will negotiate with the Palestinians 20 years and will give them nothing. So we are right now, since 1991 until now, it is about 40 years, and we get nothing.
All right.
So according to that, Israel is destroyed in all the power they have between their hands, the two-state solution. And again, I told you, there is 3 options.
Yes.
This option,
or the two-state solution,
or one-state solution by ending the apartheid system with Israeli system.
All right. Thank you so very much, Nader Alturk, to have joined us, to have come all the way to the studios to talk about the options that are present in front of the world as far as the future of Palestine is concerned.
And we are waiting for the support from all the human beings, all our brothers and sisters in humanity, not only Muslim Ummah, by end the occupation and giving the opportunity for us as a human being to have our freedom, our independent state with Jerusalem at its capital.
Inshallah, this is what we will see in the coming weeks and months. We will have Pakistan's support anytime, any place, and you know that.
We are sure about that. Jazakallah.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, to have joined us for this important episode of Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments pertaining to us. You in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.